Hi, welcome to the channel Coders Arc, where we unravel the world of coding and architecture together. And today I'm going to talk about AgentForce architecture. In my previous videos, I have talked about agents and I have explained how agents work in Bedrock framework. Now I will be doing more videos on how agents can work in the open source LangChain and Langsmith framework, but this session is purely focused on AgentForce that is built on top of Salesforce. Now, if you have applications that are built in Salesforce, I highly recommend not building the agents in another cloud framework, but utilizing the very powerfully emerging AgentForce architecture. I will go in depth in how the agents work, how agents map to topics, actions, prompts, flows, and different capabilities of the framework. I will also walk you through an example end-to-end that will hopefully give you a good frame of reference on how to think about agents to solve some really complex problems, and how you can use agents in your applications to solve some problems yourself. So with that said, let's dive right into it. Now, before we dive into the AgentForce architecture, let's take a quick look at what the general agents architecture looks like. So on the left side, you have an interaction user that tries to talk to an agent using natural language. They use the prompts and get the response back from the agents. Now, agents are used to solve problems that are not relatively straightforward. It's not a kind of a problem that you can use a static program using a bunch of if-then else's and a sequence of procedural steps to solve and get to the end result. Usually these are complex problems with a lot of small sub-problems inside of that. And that's where large language models come into picture. These large language models are pre-trained on a very large amount of historical problems, and also a lot of reasons and steps that were taken to break down those problems and getting to the solution. So whenever a large language model sees your current problem, it knows using the chain of thought reasoning how to break that into smaller subsets of problems. Now, how does agent, you can view agent as nothing but an orchestrator. So once the LLM has broken down the problem into smaller substeps, how does the agent get to the final problem solution? And it has two things that it needs. One is tools. Tools are nothing but, depending on the framework, these are nothing but APIs, processes, automations, flows that are predefined, and using the open API schema, you know the intent and purpose of these APIs, what are the method definition, what are the endpoint definitions, what is the purpose of the parameters. That's all pretty well defined in the tools definitions. And then you have knowledge bases. Knowledge bases are, I think I've talked about this in previous videos and you can go look it up. It's based on the RAG architecture. Essentially, before you send a problem to LLM, you can reference that in the vectors that is available as knowledge bases. Now, for agent to work in problem solving mode, it needs to have the concept of memory. So there is a short-term and long-term memory, and I will talk about that in detail in next few videos. But for the purpose of this video, what memory does is it allows agent to continue to reason through a pretty complex problem. And this is how agent works in conjunction with an LLM to get a response back to the user. Let's take a look at the AgentForce architecture now. So before we dive into the AgentForce architecture, you should know that it is built in Salesforce. Salesforce is a platform as a service, and Salesforce as a framework already offers a lot of things like objects, knowledge base, emerging data cloud, middleware interaction using MuleSoft where you can connect to external systems of records, the vector database which can be accessed through API, a lot of automation like the SOQL programming, Apex programming, Lightning Web Components, prompts, flows, standard. And then also there are two important concepts in an agent, which is a unified metadata framework. One is the concept of topic. Topic is pretty self-explanatory. There are four components of a topic. One is the description. So whenever an agent works, you define a bunch of topics, like what are the areas that agent is supposed to address. So for example, You can define topics like this agent can only work with accounts, cases, contracts, opportunities, and those are the realms within which the agent will operate. The scope, you can define that do not look at records that are beyond 2 months old, or do not go for a different license, or you can define like various criteria in the scope. And there is another concept called as classification description. So whenever you're using a chat styled interaction with an agent, you can enter certain keywords, and whenever those keywords are entered in the system, an agent knows, okay, I need to now invoke this topic because that was a classification defined for that topic. And then finally there are instructions. Instructions are nothing but natural language steps, so pretty plain English steps on how an agent should behave. So this is almost very similar to how if you hired a service agent, a human service agent in your organization, you would give them some basic script on how to address a customer's problem. They cannot go beyond that, and they cannot go above and beyond what their defined responsibilities are. And the way they address the customer, the way they look up data, the way they discard certain information, hide certain information, or reveal certain information to the end user. So those are the instructions, and these are the very, very useful when you're trying to solve the problem. And then finally, each topic has several actions associated with them. So there are various types of actions. There are apex actions, there are flows, there are prompts. But basically a concept of an action is that these are defined concrete steps. So if you look back at my old video where I talked about how the actions work in Bedrock, you have the concept of lambda functions, which are pretty standalone methods which do a very modular piece of work. Similar to that, actions are those static concrete automations that do a very concrete piece of work. And whenever a topic is trying to solve an end user problem, these actions are invoked. These are defined automations that get invoked to achieve the end result. And that's how the agents work. So basically, if in my previous slide I was showing you the tools, right? So the topics and the actions are the tools that are available to an agent to solve the problem. So that's how the AgentForce architecture works. And now I will show you how an AgentForce agent can use topics that are using the defined flows to solve the problem. So let's dive right into it. I am now on the setup homepage. And before we look into the agents, I just want to look at what are some of the automations I have predefined for this tutorial. So I'll go into flows, and you can look at, there is a flow that I created, which is reassign cases flow. And it is a flow that is built using the flow builder. And you don't really have to know the details of what it's doing, but essentially it's asking for a source account name, a target account name, and then it's going to loop through all of these accounts that are in this, or all of the different cases within an account, source account, and then assign those into the target account. This is just a very basic automation that I have created. I have also created another automation which is called update contracts. And as you can see, it is very similar. It's taking an input account name and then finding the contracts that are more than 18 years and 18 months in duration, and wherever you find those matching contracts, it is updating those contracts with special terms. These are some very hypothetical automations I have created. And finally, there is another flow where I'm updating the description for matching opportunities. Again, this is an automation created in Flow Builder where I take an input account name, find all the associated opportunities, I loop through those opportunities, and I update the description of those opportunities with some hypothetical description. So there is nothing special going on in these automations. These are just some hypothetical automations I have created. And now let's dive into the agents. So I'll type agents. So to get the AgentForce access, you need to have a Service Cloud license. and you can, I think the pricing is still being worked on, so you can work with your Salesforce account team to get access, but I'll dive right into the agents. So these are the list of agents that you will see. I will go into the agent that I have already created, which is the account, contracts, cases, opportunities agent. But if you want to create a new agent, there is a plus button over here, and there is a lot of useful resources like the trails and a lot of documentation in the help section. So I will go right into the agent that I have pre-created. So let's look at the details. Before I open it in the builder, let's look at the description. So basically it delivers a personalized customer interaction with an autonomous AI agent. AgentForce service agent intelligently supports your customers with common inquiries and escalate complex issues. This is just a basic description. The role is that you are a digital accounts management assistant specializing in reassigning cases, updating contracts and opportunities. This is something that I created. This is written in plain English. Somewhat sets the role for whenever an agent is launched, it knows that this is the role it has to assume. The company is also hypothetical. It's a commercial real estate investment company. So if we open this thing in the builder, this is where you will see the topics. So I had already created a topic, but let's say I want to create a new topic. Then you can click the new button and you can either create a new topic or add from the asset library. The asset library has some pre-configured topics, but if you create a new topic, it then becomes available for the future and gets added to the asset library. So I will show you the topic that I had already created, and it's called the accounts, contracts, opportunities and case management, and the topic label indicates the same. This is the classification description that I was telling you. So whenever the human conversation determines that there is something to do with the account, it invokes this topic. Right now in this agent, I'm only showing one topic, but ideally you can have multiple topics assigned to an agent. You want to play around. I think in the future there are some benchmarking around how many topics you want one agent to act. Think of agents working very similar to how humans work. If you start giving too many topics to an agent, then they start hallucinating. So I think there are about 5 to 10, maybe 20 maximum topics with some very predefined roles and scope. So the scope is your job is to only stay within the bounds of the flows associated with this topic as input actions. So this is something that I have defined, and I also explicitly say that you cannot do actions other than the actions specified in the flows defined as actions for this topic. Finally, in the instructions, again, you can add a lot of instructions. For the demo purpose, I'm just showing a very basic use case where I say present the user the options in numeric format for reassigning cases, updating contracts and updating opportunities. When the user selects one of these options, ask them for the appropriate inputs as per the topic action inputs definition. So if you remember the last screen, I was showing you that the agents need to have a very concrete understanding of the input and output definitions, and once they know that, they are able to identify how to run the action. So we'll see that in action right now. So let me activate this agent, and once I activate, you can see the agent says let's chat. So I will say hello, my name is Ankit and I would like to handle account management activities. So based on the classification description, the bot is going to recognize that I'm trying to do account management activities. So it's going to think through it. And it will give me all the options. So as you know that this topic, let's look at the topic's actions. There are only 3 actions assigned. So these are the flows that I showed you previously. The reassign cases flow, update contracts flow, and the update description for matching opportunities flow. It gives me those options in human plain English. So reassign cases, update contract terms, and update opportunities. So let's say I want to update the contract terms. So I said 2. So it says it recognized. So you can see how the logic or how the reasoning is happening from the agent's point of view. So it's all showing here, and it's giving the reasoning and the agent response. So now let's see if I provided the account name. This is also an account that I have already created. So if you see, what ends up happening is it says the action is successful. So usually what happens in this scenario is, let's look at it. So the instructions say present the user options in the numeric format, which it provided, right? It gave me 3 options, and then there are 3 actions, very concrete actions associated with it. Now when I selected option number 2, it knew that it had to call the update contracts flow. The update contracts flow had very concrete definitions of the input and output, which I will show you in just a second. Actually, let's look at it right now. So here is the input definition, and here is the output definition, which is what I had defined when I defined the flow. So let's look at the flow again, and let's look at the elements. So there are 2 variables. One is the output variable, which is the flow completion successful, and the input variable, which is the user entered account name to get matching contracts. So that's how the agent knows that it needs to leverage these input and output definitions. Let's go back. Let's go back one more. And that's how it was able to so that's how it was able to identify, okay, Coders Arc Healthcare is the account name, so I mapped it to the input definition, and I will run the flow, and once the flow is run, it finds all the contracts that were associated with this account and updated the description of those. And once that action is successful, it asks, is there anything else you can help with? So I can say something else to continue the conversation. Yes, I need help with reassigning cases. So now the agent will think through this, and it knows that, okay, I have a flow associated for the reassigning of the cases, and it needs the source account name and the target account name. So I can specify source as Coders Arc Healthcare, and target is Target Healthcare. These are the accounts that are already there existing in my org. So when I enter this, the bot is going to look at the input and output definitions available inside the flows, and now it has successfully assigned the cases that were available in my source account to my target account. We can actually check it. If we go over here, let's go back, and let's go to the accounts. As you can see, there are 2 accounts over here, Coders Arc and Target Healthcare. Let's look at Target Healthcare. And actually I have rolled back some actions, so never mind. But the point is that the actions have successfully completed. So the actions have successfully completed. I have put the rollback. So usually when this agent executes, I've asked it to roll back the results, but point is that the action is successful. And this is how you can continue the conversation. So if I, let's say, want to manage the opportunities now, the agent will look at the available flows, and it will say, please provide the account name for which you want to update the opportunities. And let's say I said Coders Arc Healthcare. And you can see the reasoning was that it identified that there was an available flow for update description for matching opportunities. So it mapped the provided account name into the accounts by account name, mapped input JSON definition, and provided the successful result. So hopefully by this point you understand the concept. Basically, using the natural language processing and the problem solving breakdown capabilities of the large language model, the agent is able to successfully guide the user through a pretty complex problem. Now you can say, no, I'm done now. Thanks for your help. And you can end the conversation here. So this is how a basic agent works. Obviously, this is a very simple example. I will show in the future example how Apex automations can work with this, how prompt templates can work, how you can define some more complex flows, how you can put some more context information in the current chat to guide the agent. So basically, this is how an agent works. So finally, I will recap this video. In this video, we revisited the concept of agents, and then we dived into the AgentForce architecture. In my opinion, this is a relatively new technology and relatively new framework within Salesforce, but I think Salesforce will be very successful with AgentForce. Essentially because they had all the right fundamentals as a platform in terms of how they define the metadata, how they have their processes and automations, how they have their connectivity with external systems of records, and how they have analytics capabilities built into the platform. With all the plumbing in place and with the right fundamentals, I think AgentForce is a very strong capability that's available in the Salesforce. If you have your applications that are running in Salesforce, I highly recommend to use the AgentForce agents instead of building your own agents using LangChain or Bedrock agents hosted in another cloud, because Salesforce AgentForce will not only be quicker and more efficient, but it will honor the dynamic permissions. So with that said, if you found the value in this content useful, please hit the like button and also subscribe to the channel. Thanks.